and welcome to the Amplifying Scientific Innovation podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sophia Onye, founder and CEO of the Sophia Consulting Firm, a life science marketing and communications consultancy that was established in New York City with the goal of amplifying scientific innovation. The goal of this podcast is to showcase scientific innovation stemming from global life science companies through conversations with senior leaders who share their unique leadership journey, corporate vision, and industry outlook. My guest today is Dr. Ted Love, President and CEO of Global Blood Therapeutics, GBT, a biopharmaceutical company that is working to discover, develop, and deliver life-changing treatments for people living with grievous blood-based disorders, starting, of course, with sickle cell disease. Dr. Love is a highly respected biopharmaceutical industry leader with years of broad management experience, supported by nearly a decade of prior experience as a practicing physician. He was inspired to rejoin the life science industry after an early retirement to help address the ongoing healthcare disparities facing the sickle cell disease community. He is currently leading GBT in its mission to develop therapies for this underserved patient population. He currently serves on the board of directors of Royalty Pharma and the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, or Bio. In addition, he holds a BA in molecular biology from Haverford College and an MD from Yale Medical School. He completed a residency in internal medicine and a fellowship in cardiology at the Massachusetts General Hospital. Ted and I connected on LinkedIn based on our backgrounds as Yale alumni and our mutual interest in sickle cell anemia and other diseases that affect underserved patient populations worldwide. And I'm just smiling from cheek to cheek because I'm so excited to speak with Ted today. So welcome to the show, Ted.
Thank you, Dr. Sophia. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's my pleasure. And I will start with my favorite question because I'm absolutely curious to see what you're going to say. So what is your definition of scientific innovation?
Well, I think innovation is when you have a set of ideas or understandings and you apply those ideas to see if you can affect an important outcome. And an example of that is actually our company, where we understood why sickle hemoglobin organizes into these rods. And we had the idea that if we made a molecule that would bind to hemoglobin and alter the shape of the hemoglobin, it would inhibit the ability for this inappropriate organization or polymerization to occur. And that could fundamentally interrupt the molecular basis of the disease. So we did that, and it works. Innovation doesn't always work, but innovation is really about understanding issues and then seeing if your understanding can allow you to affect a dramatic outcome.
Mm-hmm. I like your definition. It talks about continuity. It's not a one and done thing, and it's not always going to be successful. And that's really unique for our industry. I think many other industries, if a technology does not work, then no. But we always seem to go back and research and think about it. So I really appreciate that definition. So my next question for you is, you've accomplished quite a lot, right? And it's really hard, I'm sure, to pick one single thing that you consider to be your most significant achievement. But we're going to try and pick one, maybe two. But what do you think that might be? What is your most significant professional or scientific accomplishment to date?
Well, maybe it's because it's the most recent, but it's also probably the most emotional one for me. Mm-hmm. It would in fact be the company that we've created, Global Blood Therapeutics, mm-hmm. And the product that we've created for sickle cell disease. This is a very unique company a very special company. I think it kind of is a role model for all companies in biotech in many ways. Our company is 56% female
Mm-hmm.
and 52% people of color. So it's a very diverse company, and people are outstanding. So I think we have a gold standard company, and it's really been through the brilliance of our people and the collaborative nature of our people with experts and leaders, patients, patient
Mm-hmm.
advocates, that we were able to make this innovation in Oxford. So I'm, again, very proud of the company, and I'm very proud of the product that we've been able to make for patients. Dr. Sophia, there's one thing that I should stress is that
Mm-hmm.
it usually takes about 12 years to
Mm-hmm.
make a drug.
Mm-hmm.
CBT was actually founded as an idea in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
We made a molecule um, that is now known as Oxbryta in 2013. We put that compound through all the preclinical testing required by the Food and Drug Administration and put it into humans for the first time in January of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
We accelerated the drug development so rapidly that the drug was approved in
Wow.
November of 2019. Now, those are just remarkable accomplishments in terms of speed. And it was also done exceptionally well. The drug received breakthrough designation from the Food and Drug Administration.
Mm-hmm.
It received prime designation from the European health authorities. And of course, it's already approved in the US and already
Mm-hmm.
available to help patients.
Wonderful. I believe that it received a breakthrough drug nomination from Economy as well. So I tuned in last week to hear you speak about the drug, and you were very eloquent, and I appreciate that perspective, really.
Well,
Um,
this is all about the patient. As you know,
right.
um, we've trained to help people, and that's really what's inspiring about these jobs is that you can change, you can help people. I used to practice medicine, as you referenced,
Mm-hmm.
and I many times miss that. But the thing that makes up for it is that the innovations that we make can literally help thousands,
Yeah.
if not millions of people. So
Yeah.
that's really very exciting.
No, I mean, that's remarkable. So, as you may know, I was born in Nigeria, and I still have cousins, friends that live with sickle cell anemia. And in the US, it's not such a problem. In fact, it's considered a rare disease here, but back in Africa, it's not. So, I would be curious to know then, why did Global Blood Therapeutics choose to focus on blood-based disorders, specifically sickle cell anemia?
Well, I mean, we because of the unmet medical need.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when GBT started to work on this, there was really only one approved drug in the United States to treat this disease. Um, when I was a kid growing up, sickle cell patients often did not see their 20th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And we made some improvements uh, that extended survival typically into the 40s, which is not very good either. But
Yeah.
those improvements were really simple things like vaccinations and
Mm-hmm.
penicillin prophylaxis. We really haven't done anything fundamentally to interrupt the disease in an innovative way, going back to our previous comments, really understanding this disease
Mm-hmm.
and leveraging that knowledge to really go after fundamentally attacking the disease, like we've attacked the virus in HIV, like
Mm-hmm.
we are attacking the problem of cystic fibrosis of the cilia not moving. So we now are starting to do that, and that's what has been needed in sickle cell disease. It's been a neglected disease, so we
Mm-hmm.
focused on it because it was a problem that nobody had solved.
Wow. Well, thank you for doing that. I think it's remarkable. Now, one of the things that I've observed about GBT is you have quite a huge focus on patient advocacy. So I would like you to provide a top line overview of any work that you're doing in patient advocacy, as well as your vision for GBT.
So I'll start with maybe the vision for GBT,
Yeah.
and then I'll come back to the patient advocacy. So the vision that I like to articulate to all of our employees, but also to everyone external in the company that follows us, is that our goal is to make sickle cell disease a well-managed chronic disease for which you don't suffer and you don't prematurely die. And I think we can do that with oral pill therapy. We can cure sickle cell disease with a bone marrow transplant, but that is a very big, complex, risky procedure. Oxbryta is our first attempt to fundamentally go after the disease, but it's not our last. And we've made a big innovation in Oxbryta going after the molecular basis of the disease, but we will do more. And I think when we either come out with new therapies or therapies that we can add to Oxbryta, I think we can make this disease essentially a silent disease that you don't suffer from if we start to treat you at birth. So that's the vision for the company, specifically around sickle cell disease, and it's a very exciting vision, which has been something that has rallied enormous enthusiasm internally and allowed us to attract exceptional people who are committed to the company and that mission. Patient advocacy is really, really critical. And the interesting thing about this is that patient advocacy was not front and center when I started in industry back in the early 90s. But that has completely changed. And I think it is a wonderful change. And just to put it into context, GBT was supporting, collaborating, going to meetings with patient advocates before we even put our molecule into the clinic. We were talking to patients and patient advocates about how to design our studies. What did they want us to demonstrate in our studies? How did they want us to conduct our studies? What would they like to see to get excited about enrolling in our studies? So we have been side by side with patient advocates before we even had a drug, before we even had a compound in humans. And I think that is the right way to do it. And it's a big change, and it's a welcome change. And by the way, the FDA has been a big supporter of this as well, which is why I think many companies now are increasingly collaborating and partnering with patient advocacy groups. My goal is for us to help each other. They certainly help us by the partnership, the advice, the conversations. We learn a lot from them.
Right.
But we owe them. We have to help them too. So we've been supporting them financially, supporting them in every way possible. We go to sickle cell walks with them. We donated money during COVID because we know many patients and families were struggling.
Wow.
So if you're gonna be engaged with someone, it has to be an authentic commitment. And I think the things that really say that you are committed is, do you show up when people need you to show up? And do you put money after the money? Someone said to me one time, a budget is a moral document. And what I think, that to me is what you do with your money really does speak to who you are. So we're committed to helping all of these groups, because at the end of the day, we are in this not just to make therapies. We are in this to change the lives of patients that are suffering.
Absolutely. I mean, you couldn't have said that any better. One of the favorite parts when you were speaking was just around collaboration and the increased visibility of patient advocacy groups. Can you think of any other changes in the past 15 years that have, happened in the biotech industry? And what do you think are some loopholes as well with some of those changes?
Well, I think one of the big changes that we've seen is that the Food and Drug Administration has been tremendously positive in terms of working with companies to accelerate getting therapies approved and available in areas where there's a tremendous unmet medical need. And sickle cell, as I said at the beginning, is such an example. We could not have done what we did in terms of the rapid rate of approval without a lot of the processes and programs that the FDA has put into place, like breakthrough therapy designation, like accelerated approval. But we also couldn't have done it without their help. We would go to them and we would explain to them what we wanted to do, why we wanted to do it, and why we felt this would be a basis for approval. And there was, of course, healthy debate and dialogue, but ultimately we came to an agreement on a strategy that was very innovative. So I think the innovation at our Food and Drug Administration has been really quite remarkable. Obviously, the technology of science is also moving at a very rapid pace. I think you see that particularly in areas like cancer, where targets are constantly being discovered, and we go after those targets either with drugs or we're after with antibodies. Sometimes now we're using, cell therapy as well. So the technology advancement has also been remarkable over my career.
That's great. And thinking through some loopholes, one of the things I always appreciate is when people cite data. So you mentioned your company is 56% female, 52% people of color. Do you think that one of the loopholes in the industry has been maybe the lack of diversity and inclusion, inclusive of even clinical trials?
I do. I think that the lack of diversity in clinical trials is something that actually has been discussed my whole career. We were talking about this back in the early 90s when I began my career, and I suspect we were talking about it before then. But the truth is we haven't done much about it. It's been a lot of talk and very little action. And it is a complex problem. There's no doubt it's a complex problem. But we, as an industry, we exist because we take on complex problems. And we survive because we solve complex problems. And GPT has had good success. In fact, we couldn't have succeeded at all because, as you know, Dr. Sophia, sickle cell disease in the United States is 95% African American. And the next largest group are Hispanics. So this is really a disease of people of color in this country. And if we can't enroll people of color, we can't get a sickle cell trial done. And we approach this problem really by trying to do what we often do in drug discovery and in biotech. We wanted to deeply understand the problem. So again, going back to the patient advocates and the patients, we talked to them at length about what they would need to hear, to see, to have to participate in clinical studies. And by doing that, we built a lot of trust. We built, quite frankly, a lot of enthusiasm to do things together. And we just haven't done that
Right.
in other areas consistently. And I'm hoping that we begin to do it.
Mhm.
But people can be slow to change. People can go
Yes.
back to their old way of doing things. And if you do things over and over the same way, you're thinking the outcome will change is absolutely crazy, right? So
Absolutely.
we're going to have to do things differently if we really want clinical trials to have a more proportional representation in them.
Wonderful. And speaking of doing things differently, what do you think we could have done as an industry to mitigate the impact of COVID-19?
Well, I think the industry has done remarkably well, actually. Uh, I would say I think we have, as a country, uh, uh, done very poorly.
Mhm.
Um, and it's quite disappointing because we were not the first uh, to really be severely affected by the pandemic. We watched a number of countries deal with this well,
Mhm.
and we saw what they did, and we watched
Mhm.
other countries struggle, and we saw what they did and what they didn't do. Um, and despite that knowledge, as a country, we behave um, like the countries that did poorly. In fact, we may
Mhm.
have excelled at setting the bar for doing things poorly. And so I think the industry, however, has been remarkable. There are already more than 200 uh, drugs, therapeutics in clinical studies for a disease that really was only um, manifest 6, 8 months ago. Uh, to have that level of investment, that number of ideas already moving forward in biotechnology company, that's remarkable. So I think our industry has been stellar. Uh,
Right.
Unfortunately, I think our government has been disappointing.
Right. I saw the open letter that Bio wrote and that you signed up on, and I completely agree with you about just sort of the path forward, how to manage that eagerness to bring a new therapy to the market with the right type of thinking that protects the patients at the end of the day. So thank you for sharing that. I told you I follow you very closely. So my next question for you then is there any technology or company that you're currently excited about? And of course, it could include GBT and why? Why are you excited about this technology or company?
Well, I've always been kind of a scientific geek, really wanting to understand um, uh, what's really going to change things. So, obviously, I'm very excited about GBT
Mhm.
um, uh, and our scientific innovation in sickle cell disease. What excites me now about GBT is our mission to really make this strategy even better. I think we've
Mhm.
proven a concept. I think we've got a therapy that's highly effective, but I think we can do better. So, us being able to continue to innovate, given the knowledge that we've accumulated in sickle cell disease, I'm excited about that. Um, we are not, however, a company platform.
Mhm.
Um, One of my good friends, John Maganora, runs a company called Alnylam, and John and his company worked for I, I, almost 20 years, I'm sure, on trying to make this RNAi technology work. And they have gotten it to work. It was a huge effort. It took a lot of persistence, but now they're making drugs. So when it comes to technology, John and Alnylam, I'm very excited about what they're doing. I think it's a platform that they will be able to apply across many diseases. So that's a technology that I'm excited about. And obviously, I'm excited about GBT and being able to continue to innovate in a single disease area to really do and I think the best example is HIV.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in medical school at Yale, HIV was a death sentence.
Right.
I mean, it was a death sentence. And so I remember crying when I would tell people they had HIV, because I knew I was telling them, you're going to be dead quite soon.
Wow.
And that was painful. And today, I could tell someone you have HIV, and I could tell them, but you have no fear. You're not going to die of this. Take these medicines. You will need to take these medicines. But if you take these medicines, you can have a normal life. We can't say that to a sickle cell patient.
Yeah.
And our vision is that we be able to say that to a sickle cell parent when they have a baby with sickle cell disease.
Yeah, that's a powerful statement, and thank you for sharing that. So my second to last question today, it comes back to this concept of innovation. So what do you think are some key consideration factors that will help us to sustain innovation in the life science industry?
Well, I think two or three things I would mention. One is investment. Innovation has great value, but you have to invest in it. I say to people all the time, if you want something, you've got to be willing to make the investment. If you want to be a professional athlete, you've got to invest in training, in your body. If we want innovation, we've got to invest in science. And I think the payoffs are tremendous, but we have to invest in it. I think, this country has done a great job in investing historically in science through the NIH. And we've also done a great job of investing in science and medicine in biotech companies and pharmaceutical companies. And we've got to continue to do that. So one of the things that scares me, quite frankly, is some of the discussions about things like most favored nation pricing. That will kill innovation, because what that will do is it will tell investors that allowed me to build GBT and to develop Oxbryta that there's no payoff. And I can guarantee you that I would not have been able to I've raised between $1.5 and $2 billion.
Wow.
There's no way I could raise that if investors felt that the price that I could charge for the drug, if we're successful, and I mean if, because they know our business is very risky, if they're not going to take on all that risk, if they know on the other end the price is going to be fixed by the government. So we've got to be willing to invest in innovation. The other point I would really love to make is the investment is in our future. Drugs become free essentially in the future. Dexamethasone, as you know, has been proven to be highly effective in reducing death in COVID-19. That drug was developed a long time ago. And now the world basically has that drug free. And that's going to be true with Oxbryta. That's true with some of the drugs we use in cancer, like CML, was a death sentence when I was in medical training. And now with Gleevec, which is generic, we have a very cheap option. So we invest in innovation, and then society basically gets an enormous gift when our patents expire. And that's the way it should be. So we've got to respect the investment, and we've got to protect the capacity to invest. And we've got to also make sure we invest in education. We've got to make sure that we are generating the minds that are going to really drive things at the NIH, drive things in our academic centers, and also drive companies, creation and company performance, and the way we're doing at GBT.
I couldn't agree with you more. You made so many great points. I had the pleasure of interviewing the CEO of ABM Biotechnology, and they are one of the companies that is looking at dexamethasone as an alternative for solving a problem with COVID, and it could be a potential global solution because it's an oral medication. You also talked about education, and personally, one of my objectives in life is to make science more accessible to all, and that's part of the reason why I launched this podcast. So thank you for sharing those great insights. And the final question is very simple. Do you have any other commentary or thoughts that you'd like to share? The floor is yours.
Well, I think maybe I would just share that I do want to inspire young people to get excited about science and to and to really get excited about learning. One of the things that helped me early on in life is I think my father, who was not well educated, said to me, "Knowledge is power."
Yeah.
Knowledge is power, and he was absolutely right. So I would really encourage all your young listeners, all the parents of young listeners, to really get their kids infected with excitement about learning, excitement about understanding things, because that knowledge will be powerful in what they can do for the world, but it'll also be powerful in terms of what they can do for them and what they can do for their families. I also, maybe just one other thing would add, in this world, we've really recognized that we're dealing with two pandemics. We're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're dealing with the reckoning of racial injustice in our country. And I would say again to all of your listeners, it's up to you all to change that. We've made progress, but we've got to really dramatically change this. It is so inappropriate that we are not a country where there is an equal representation of people of color in every position: CEOs, biotech companies, universities. The only reason we have these disparities is because of our terrible racial heritage, and we've got to get beyond that.
Wow, that is very well said. And for me, as someone that was born in Africa and I came to the US, I can tell you I've experienced pretty much most of those things that you've mentioned firsthand. But, learning to learn and being committed to education is probably one of the best ways that we can fight these the two pandemics that are ongoing right now. So I simply can't thank you enough for being a guest on this podcast. I've been looking forward to speaking with you. And just as I expected, you spoke about the things that matter, whether it's scientific innovation in the traditional sense or scientific innovation from your perspective as a physician, as a CEO, and as a man of color here in the US, an African-American male. And I appreciate your thoughts and your perspectives.
Thank you, Dr. Sophia. My pleasure.